Won't you take me back to Tennessee?
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest info about hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. This episode is brought to you by GSM Outdoors, whose vision is to preserve the sportsman's legacy, fuel innovation, and enable the next generation of outdoor enthusiasts. Think outside. That's where you'll find us. Now, make welcome your host, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got a great show lined up for you today. We are back in Morristown, Tennessee at the Region 4 office, and Mr. Matt Cameron helping me co-host. Thank you, Matt, for lining this up today.
Yeah, buddy. Glad to have you.
Got a fun show today. We're going to be talking about Eagle Bend Hatchery with the Eagle Bend Hatchery manager, Chris Morton. Chris, thank you for being here.
Well, hey, it's good to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited. We've been talking hatcheries a little bit today. We're going to talk a little bit more about hatcheries and dive into that. But first, I want to say thank you to Kingsport Station 90.3 FM WCSX. That's a hard one there. C and the S together. Appreciate that radio station for running WildCast Saturdays and Sundays at 5 a.m. It's the voice of Kingsport City Schools. They also carry the extra show at 9 a.m., 2 p.m., and 5:45 p.m. So catch that 5-minute segment during the week or the full show on the weekends. So we appreciate that station there running the show and all our stations across the state, as well as you folks out there listening on the podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find us. We appreciate that. Thanks for watching on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all that fun stuff. So we appreciate our folks out there tuning in. Today's going to be all about Eagle Bend Hatchery, and Chris is going to fill us in on that. But first, I want to learn a bit about you. It's the first time we've actually met.
It is, yeah.
Our state is long, and there's people, 700 plus employees for the TWRA, and you don't always meet everybody. And so I'm lucky to get to do these shows and meet more people, and it's good to finally meet you and learn about you. So let's just dive in today. Tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll dive into the hatchery.
So I'm an East Tennessee boy. I grew up in Spring City, Tennessee. Still live there.
Is there anything better than East Tennessee?
No, not at all.
Ray County?
Yes, sir. Ray County.
Okay, well, I grew up in Meg, so we're not too far
we're
apart.
neighbors.
Yeah.
I grew up there, lived there. My wife and I, that's where we settled down. Graduated from Tennessee Tech in 2006 and got on with the agency in 2007 in Region 3 on the reservoirs crew. Started out as a tech. Was a tech there till 2011 and then moved up to a manager there. I was over the fish attractor side of things, the habitat side of things, and also the hatchery ponds that they have there. That's the only reservoirs crew that has any hatchery responsibilities. And at the time, we had 5 ponds there that we raised basically just crappie in and a couple other things. And that place has grown now to where there's 8 ponds. They have a walleye spawning facility there, and they're spawning some crappie indoors, things like that. So That's really awesome. And then in 2022, I moved up to Eagle Bend when Stump retired. Mike Smith, he's affectionately known by everybody in the region, the fisheries world, if you know him as Stump. He's been a great mentor and friend to have over the years. It was a pleasure to come in there after he retired. So
That's about it.
Very cool. I got to meet him back when he was running the hatchery there. He's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, he
very
is
knowledgeable.
He's a great guy, and he's I'm so thankful to. We have a great relationship. We're good friends, and if I ever need anything, he never hesitates to come out, help us out, do things like that. So he's a great resource to have, and we're lucky to have a guy like Stump around.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of mentioned on the last show, we got folks that work in our hatcheries that have been there for a long time, or even come back and work part-time for us when they retire or whatnot. But just to have that knowledge and history to lean on and not to lose that,
Irreplaceable.
All right. Well, one of my guys at the hatchery that we work with is actually part of the original crew.
Oh, wow.
He has worked for the agency. It'll be 48 years in October. So he's a wealth of knowledge about Eagle Bend and just all things that have gone on there.
Would that have to be Ernie Porter?
That would be Ernie Porter.
And he's a fine fella now.
He is.
He's been working there longer than I've been alive.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go ahead and say that.
Exactly. His career is definitely older than me by a good shot. So
and he told me one time, he said, ain't many people gonna come in here and teach me a whole lot, he said.
Right.
And I didn't argue with him.
It's one of those things. If it's happened at the hatchery, he's, somebody's tried something, or I talk about wanting to do something new or change something. We tried that whenever, and he'll just, and I'll be like, okay, how'd that work?
Good to know.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's great to have a resource like that around.
And does Stump live nearby?
He does. He lives in Clinton.
Okay.
He's about 5 or 7 minutes down the road. So.
Well, I'm glad you said his name. Most people have no idea who Mike Smith is.
No, you don't. They don't.
Yeah, I don't think I remembered that or knew that. Yeah, that's
Like obituary come out when he dies someday. Nobody know who Mike Smith is. You're going to have to put Stump next to it. They're like, oh, my Stump from the hatchery. Not trying to sound morbid there, Stump, if you're listening.
Yeah.
We love you.
Exactly. So let's dive in. You covered your work history. Have you always been an outdoors person?
I have. So I grew up coon hunting. I've still got hounds. My dad and I, we coon hunt a lot. He's a red bone man. I'm a plot guy. I've got a plot hound right now. But yeah, whenever I went to college originally wanting to be an engineer, and then I didn't do so hot in chemistry and calculus, so I went to something else. And I originally wanted to do forestry, but I was at Tech and they didn't have that, so I fell into wildlife and fishery science. And when I did that, my dad said, that does not surprise me at all. Like we couldn't hardly coon hunt during the summer for you being in the creek chasing crawdads and things like that. So, I've been very fortunate to have gotten to grow up doing things like that. A lot of people, when you tell them you coon hunt, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, we go out at night, we send hounds out, and it's a lot of fun. You should try it. And we've won some people over the years, getting them to go with us. But
somebody needs to kill them varmints.
Yeah,
I'd say that.
We're trying. We've got farmers and people that are like, hey, when the season comes, and a lot of them want to wait till after deer season. They're like, kill as many as you can, and we're happy to oblige.
Well, what's wild, and I don't want to digress too much. My dad growing up, they didn't have big game to hunt back in the 50s and 60s and the 70s. They small game hunted, and coon hunting was their thing. And now it's kind of flip flop. You don't get many people that small game coon hunt anymore. Most people are big game hunters. So it's neat to see that some folks are still doing that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think that's the next show right there, coon hunting show. I don't know that we've actually done a coon hunt show in 400 plus episodes. We'll line that up.
Dog, ain't it? It's all about them dogs.
It is, yeah. Coon hunting's a lot of fun when you've got a good dog.
Yeah.
When you don't have a good dog, it's a lot of walking. You burn a lot of shoe leather up on that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, let's dive in. We were talking before the show, writing down a few notes here. 1976 is when the hatchery opened. Is that right?
Yeah, that's when it was completed. It was originally built to be a muskie and striped bass facility back then. Wow. And, we're situated right there on the Clinch River. We've got 100 acres that's inside our fence.
That's good to know. I didn't realize I had that big of a piece of property.
It is. Well, 36. We have 36 production ponds, and there's a big section of the hatchery. It's roughly 20 acres that we can't develop because it's actually a cultural site. It's a Native American mound. So,
oh, really? Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, there were plans to be a lot bigger than that and develop it over time, but we couldn't for those reasons. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've got 36 ponds there, and like I said, we originally built to do striped bass and muskie. Well, over the years, they weren't very successful with muskie. Not really sure why. They just didn't have them in the ponds growing well, things like that. And we've actually found it's a whole lot easier. We do some fish trades with people around the southeast, and we get muskie from Kentucky and North Carolina now.
Mm-hmm. What do we send them?
So we send them up to Kentucky. We send them about 2 million striped bass fry. Once we spawn them in the spring.
We're really good at spawning striped bass.
Yeah, we do real well at that.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, over the years, eagle bin's changed a little bit. So we've moved on from muskie. We raise about 10 different species now. We start out in the spring. We do walleye, sauger, and saugeye. And around that same time, we're doing black crappie. So we're getting brood fish for black crappie. We do some Florida strain largemouth there. We didn't do any this past year, but usually we have a couple ponds of those.
Are they the pure Floridas or the hybrid?
No, they're pure Floridas.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We've only stocked some hybrids, some F1s in a couple places. We're still stocking pure Floridas mainly everywhere we're stocking bass. Yeah, letting them doing the hybridization out in the wild on their own. Yeah. So that's worked out real well. But we also do striped bass, hybrid striped bass, and sunfish. We raise red ear, bluegill to stock in some places. And then we raise forage fish. So we keep so many fish on site over the winter that we've got to raise fish to feed the fish. So
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. Yeah, Eagle Bend, we actually hold extra brood over for Humboldt Fish Hatchery for our Florida bass facility. So anytime they're running short on brood or anything, if we've got them around, we'll harvest them, send them over that way to be integrated into the spawning over there. So
Cool. Yeah, working together across the state. That's a long distance there.
it is. That's a long haul.
Yeah. Well, you talked about stripe being one of the easier ones, I guess, one of the most productive y'all have there. What else do y'all? What was the next easiest or the most productive?
So one of the most productive ones that we do is walleye. So
Walleye, okay.
we this past year we spawned about 30 walleye females, and we ended up at the end of the year with around 600,000 fingerlings that got stocked. We generally try to harvest somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 million eggs. And this year was a great year for us for walleye. We got such a good quality of broodfish of females from the reservoir. We were averaging about 150,000 eggs per walleye female that we spawned. So it was a really, really awesome year. Usually to get those numbers, it takes us spawning about 40 to 50 females. So we were able to do that in way less, which is good for us. It's good for the fish. Excuse me. It's good for the fish. It's good for us in that we don't hold the fish that long. We get our spawn over pretty quick. We're able to get them out in the pond, get them growing pretty quick. So yeah, that's our next most productive thing. And those are really walleye. As long as you've got some good brood fish, they're one of the easier things to do.
Awesome.
Fine with me. I love to catch walleye and eat walleye. So,
I heard that. Yeah. They're great.
Yeah, you've been out chasing them and fishing for them, and we need to do more of that. That'd be fun.
let's go. Yeah. I know a few guys. I ain't that good, but I go with people that are.
Yeah.
Get me around them, I can catch a few.
It's good to know a few people who know how to.
Which brings up, well, and I want to talk about the black crappie spawning. You got a specific technique for that before we get into cannibalism. We've been joking about that.
Yeah, it's a fish eat fish world, right?
It is.
Fish eat fish world. Tell us about the black crappie technique that y'all are using, and then we'll talk about cannibalism.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of lead with that because it helps the story. So what we found over the years in black crappie, and this happens a lot in walleye and stuff too, that we get a lot of cannibalism in the pond from fingerlings eating other fingerlings and also broodfish eating fingerlings as they grow. And with our black crappie over the years, what we've found is if we can get our black crappie fingerlings out in their own pond away from the brood, they're a lot more productive. We get a lot better return, a lot better results at the end of the year. So what we started doing is there's this material called Spawn Tech, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it comes in 50 or 100 foot rolls, and we cut it up in squares. And if you put it in an area where there's no other substrate, like we use, if you do it indoors, you use like a fiberglass tank or a fiberglass trough. We use a concrete raceway. You put that out there and put crappie pairs in there. Those males will go find their own mat they're happy with, and then you'll get the females coming through and spawning on those mats. And we can take those mats and hang them up in another pond and just let those eggs hatch out and those fry get out in the pond on their own.
So once they're fertilized, you're picking them up, taking them, and putting them somewhere else.
Exactly. We just have a tank. We pull them right out of the raceway, put them in some water, and then we move them over and just hang them in another pond and let them hatch.
Who's the genius that come up with that?
So there's a lot of states elsewhere that do similar things like that.
You could have lied to me and said,
no. I can't do that.
Oh, Stump, all those years.
Yeah. Anyway. For us, it's really, it's really pretty easy for us to just grab crappie broodfish, throw them in a pond, forget about them till October, and then harvest them and go on. It's actually adds a little bit of work to it for us, but it does a couple of, it lets us get them out in the pond on their own, but it also cuts down a whole lot on the amount of broodfish that you need. So we were able to have mats. We had 50 pairs in our raceway this year, and we were able to stock our hatchery, Morristown Hatchery, and we sent some to some Region 3 also. So we were able to really get a lot of mats out there, and it's just helped us be a little more efficient with what we can get a hold of.
Is this similar to the mats that Humboldt use for large?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So that's a real similar technique.
It is. It's the very same thing.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Well, you may have touched on this a little bit, but fish, do you have fish production all year round?
For most of the year. So we get started in March. March is when we start with our walleye. And our last ponds that we harvest are usually in November. Sometimes we carry over into December just a little bit. We have, we're kind of broken up into early fish and late fish. So we have all of our walleye, sauger, saugeye. Those are put in the ponds usually around April the 1st, and we're taking them out about mid-May. Because like we talked about cannibalism a minute ago, walleye are highly piscivorous, right? They eat other fish. And once they get to about 2 inches long, they start eating their brothers and sisters. So, generally, about 45 days is the max you want to leave some walleye in a pond. So we try to get them out as quick as we can. And then the next one to go in is our striped bass. We're picking up our striped bass broodfish the last couple of weeks of April and spawning them and putting them out usually in first couple of weeks of May. And they're coming out in late June, early July usually. And then there's kind of a dead period in that. The water's too warm for us to harvest fish, things like that. So once the water cools back off, we'll start harvesting all of our black crappie and our sunfish and things like that, and moving fish around the hatchery. So usually by late November, early December, we're done moving fish and we're kind of wrapped up for the year. That's kind of our goal, is to be done by Thanksgiving. Sometimes it doesn't happen, sometimes it does, but that's kind of what we shoot for.
Well, how do you collect them out of a pond? I understand the raceways, it's smaller and contained, but
right.
How are you getting them out of this pond?
So in the pond, we have a concrete structure called a kettle, and it is below pond grade. So the drain is actually probably about 24 to 30 inches below the pond bottom. We drain all the water. We have a screen in there that keeps the fish from washing out. Just drain all the water down in there, and then we just get in there with a dip net, dip them out, put them in a bucket, send them up, weigh them, and put them on the truck.
So where does that water go? You have to fill that pond back up after you drain it.
So the water, when we fill it up and drain it, we have an effluent pond that's our settling pond that it goes back out, and then once it settles out, there's an outlet that goes right back out to the Clinch River there.
Okay.
So
is that your source then? The Clinch?
It is. We pump our water from the Clinch River. We actually share a pump house with the city of Clinton, so yeah, it's a good deal.
So good water quality coming through there.
It is. It's great water quality. It's what I'm about to say sort of contradicts that, and you'll follow me, but the water is great. It's trout water. It's got great oxygen. It's clean, pristine. But when we put it in the pond, our fry, they eat zooplankton and other, the zooplankton eat other little single cell things, phytoplanktons, other little bacteria and things. Well, the water from the Clinch River is great and the quality is awesome, but there's not a lot of zooplankton in it. So we've got to really work hard to keep our water fertilized, our ponds fertilized and everything up like that, so that when we put our fry in there, they've got a good base of zooplankton to eat on and get started on and start growing. So
you say fertilize, just actual fertilizer?
Well, we use soybean meal. You can use actual fertilizer. A lot of places, if you're looking for a quick turnaround in your pond, you can use liquid fertilizers and things, but those are tough to get a good balance on, because you'll get a lot of algae that absorbs those nutrients and really grows. And when we get in a pond, you get a lot of things like filamentous algae and those green algae that really, they can clog up our screens, they can trap fish. So we try not to do very much like actual inorganic fertilizer. The soybean meal, it goes in there. Anything in a pond that's organic, when it starts breaking down, there's bacteria and things that start breaking that down, and that's what all the zooplankton eats. And so we're putting organic material in there, trying to stimulate all of that bacteria and things like that, and eventually that just goes up the food chain.
So it's a good bacteria.
It is.
You think of bacteria, you think you don't want that in there.
Right.
That's cool. So, and Roger was telling us about the temperature of that water that he has. It's a good, consistent temperature. What temperature is trout water? It's coming in cool, right?
It is. It's coming in. Usually we're around 56 degrees. But that can depend on how much they're generating out of Norris. So if they're generating a lot, we'll be closer to 50 degrees sometimes.
How far below Norris are you?
So we're about 14 river miles.
Is that far?
Below, yeah.
Is that far?
Now,
that water's still that cold. That's
it
is.
Stream. It is, and we are right on the border of where the Melton Hill Reservoir boundary is. So if the water's down in Melton Hill, we're pumping out of the river. If it's not and they're not generating very much, it's pretty much still water at that point. So, but it's still kind of in the trout zone, so still that cold.
Coming in that cold, are you fighting that temperature to try to get it up a little bit, or is that a good?
No, it's an all right temperature for us, especially in the summer when we have to pump water in. Our ponds range anywhere in size from 1/10 of an acre up to 2 acres. And most of our production ponds are about 8/10 of an acre or an acre in that size. So when we're pumping that cold water in, it's helping keep our pond cool a little bit, but it's not having a huge impact on the temperature in the pond. So
warms up rather quickly.
Yeah, it does. It gets in there and mixes right up, and it's actually really good for us because we can pump that water in the summertime when we're harvesting like our striped bass. Our striped bass stress out real easy from temperature and things like that. So it lets us keep them cooler while we're harvesting. So it helps us out quite a bit over the year too.
That's good. That's really good. So let's speak on challenges. I know we've touched on some, but like what's some of the main challenges that you face with that hatchery?
One of the biggest challenges we face is just our aging infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Being 50 years old, things are changing. We've got some valves that are stuck, things like that. Pipes that are, collapsing. It's just challenges you work with a 50-year-old facility, and we're upgrading those as we go. We've got several ponds that are lined because they've leaked over time, things like that. So, over time, just like a reservoir ages and things get a little less productive, we've got to work to keep things productive at the hatchery also, just as it ages. And then, we talked about the water, keeping the water fertilized and up to where we need it is one of our other big challenges.
Well, Roger talked to him about predation from birds, primarily different heron species. Do you see any predation issues per se on y'all's ponds?
So we do. What we have the most of that's an issue is cormorants. Of course, cormorants are everywhere now. You go pull up below a dam somewhere and you'll bust up a raft of a few hundred, no problem. Unfortunately, the fish we have right now are exactly what they want to eat. They're hunting those 3-4 inch fish, so keeping them run out of our ponds is that's our biggest predation. We've got great blues, great egrets, things like that show up, but they can only go so far in a pond and be effective, right? Cormorants, on the other hand, they can dive and swim and go, and they are definitely a thorn in my side.
Well, you may have to share some of Roger's technology and things that they're doing over there.
It's going to be hard to cover your pond. It's big.
They're big. Yeah, that's something to think about it.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't envy Roger on. He's those birds, like we get a few bird problems, but nothing like he has.
Well, he's talked about too. Nitrogen gas and now CO2 gas is an issue in his spring that's coming in there at Buffalo. Do you see any water quality issues?
No, we usually don't have. We do daily checks of like the dissolved oxygen temperature and things like that as we go. And no, we don't struggle with those same types of issues that he has. And our fish that we're raising, trout are pretty particular about the water quality they need. Ours can handle a little wider range of good and bad. So
makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on, got a few minutes here, touch on the stocking and things like that. Now, people often maybe complain or they just don't know that, we're stocking and where to find those stocking reports. They're almost updated. They're weekly almost or bi-weekly on our website, and people can find where these fish are going. So just talk a little bit about the stocking process and encourage people there that we're putting fish in.
We are. So that's one of the biggest questions I get is people are like, do you just stock your fish in the river out here? I'm like, no, technically all of our hatcheries, our fish are considered statewide. So we could send fish to Kentucky Lake tomorrow if we needed to. Mm-hmm. But usually for logistics, we really want to keep them pretty close because it's a lot easier on the fish to haul them, under a couple, 2.5, 3 hours, things like that. So we stock a lot of fish in Norris, Cherokee, Douglas. Watts Bar is a big one for us. We stock a lot of striped bass there. So, all of that. So our statewide hatchery coordinator, David, we're in constant communication with him during harvest time, and he's getting those updated online. We have I think it's in a PDF that you can find under the fishing tab on our website, and he's updating those all the time and constantly. So if anybody ever has a question of what's been put in, you can go find that. That's readily available.
Right. And go ahead.
I was saying it's something we need to promote more because all the time we monitor social media, Jason and I do, and you get probably weekly, why don't you stock more fish in? X lake or this lake. Why don't you stock more of these in this particular lake? Well, that document you're talking about is so up to date. Like it's within a month probably, or maybe even the same month that we're in. I can go to that and I can show people, hey, we are stocking fish. It may not be the exact number or species that you want, but we are stocking fish in here. So that's a great asset that we need to make.
Yeah,
there is a schedule. There is a calendar. Yeah,
it is. And what a lot of people don't realize is, these stocking numbers, they're not arbitrary, right? There's a whole process that the fisheries division goes through to decide, first off, how many fish we can stock in a particular reservoir. A lot of what goes into that is how much fishing pressure there is, how fertile is the lake. All of these different things go into that. And then, I have people meet me at the ramp all the time and they're like, why are you stocking that? You don't need to raise those. And I want to tell them, like, I have no control over what gets requested, and all that's vetted, all that goes through that process, and then we raise what gets asked of us. And there's just a lot that goes into that. We don't wake up tomorrow and think, next year I want to put a million striped bass somewhere. It goes through a process of, all the reservoir crews are out collecting data during the spring all year. We've got creel clerks that are out there doing, collecting all this important data that goes into all of those decisions. So
yeah, that data is important, and don't be afraid to if a creel clerk comes up and stops you, he's not writing you a ticket. He just wants to get that information. Share that with us if you don't mind. It's good stuff to help us move forward. And remind people, too, they think, you're stocking this, but you're stocking this probably more than likely, right?
Yeah, and that's how another way we're different. A lot of people see trout being stocked, and they're catchable fish when they're stocked. Yeah. We're stocking fish. Most of the time, our fish are somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 inches. And, we get them out then and back in there, and hopefully they grow big, they survive well, and grow fast. So
think about the size of a reservoir compared to the whatever 50, 60, 70,000 fish that go in there, and just how vast and big that is. I think it would be impossible to stock enough fish in one body of water of a particular species to make every angler happy. I mean, think about how many places they've got to hide and go. And anyway, it's hard to please everybody. I guess
it is. We do our best. We try to make fishing better. That's our our motto.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Chris. Thanks for being here and sharing your experience and wisdom and expertise there. It's always good to hear from our guys in the field and doing all the hard work. So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Shout out to your crews too, who put in all the work. And
they do. They work hard all year. I really we couldn't do anything we do without boots on the ground. So
that's awesome. Well, Matt, thanks for lining this up. Good stuff.
Oh yeah. I feel like he could go another 30 minutes at least. But maybe we'll do it again sometime.
We'll find us another time. Maybe visit the hatchery as well. It could be fun.
Yeah.
Well, this is Tennessee WildCast. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. You can invest in Tennessee's wildlife future by purchasing a license at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.